Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gaetz. I think we got him remotely. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. I regret I'm not there with you in person, and I would be, but for some of the ongoing negotiations regarding our government funding that we're working through. I want to follow up on where my colleague, Representative Fitzgerald, was speaking with Officer Yanis about the development of witnesses. And I just wonder if what we've seen from prosecutors that don't charge cases appropriately or that plead cases out for minor offenses where people who might be violent are back on the streets, does that make it harder to get witnesses to come forward? Do the witnesses potentially fear that despite their participation in the criminal justice system, they might be subject to some sort of retaliation?
Oh, definitely, 100%. You know, especially with this cash bond, you're going to be releasing offenders, and the first thing their lawyer tells them is there's no victim, no witness, there's no crime. So all they're going to do is retaliate and threaten, and at worst, maybe kill some of these They're going to basically re-victimize these victims and witnesses so that they don't have to have a trial or court.
It's just an astonishing amount of testimony that we have a criminal justice system that now the participants in that system are saying re-victimizes the people that we're trying to protect. I don't believe that the answer to these questions comes out of Washington, but I do think hearings like this are really important because, you know, we want to get a sense of what some of the early warning signs are in a community like Chicago so that the challenges you face don't metastasize. If you were giving a briefing to another community that had a prosecutor with some of the same theories that the prosecutors have had in Chicago, or some of the constraints that a city council might try to put on a police department, what would you do to warn other communities about some of the early things that they would want to rebuff so that their streets aren't turned over to the criminals like Chicago's have been?
It's very difficult because I would also fear for their safety, you know, so it's like I can only speak for myself. Like after the incident that happened to me, I had my family and me move out of the city because I just felt it unsafe. I love the city of Chicago, and it's a beautiful city. And I love the people, the community, but I just felt like I couldn't protect my family the way I used to. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, I'd love the lieutenant's perspective on that as well.
At the very basis of it is to pay attention to who they're voting for. It's not just with just one person. It's not just the mayor. It's not just our prosecutor. It's the mayor, the prosecutors, our judges, our legislators, even our aldermen. It's become such a cesspool of ill intent. It makes no sense when people are repeatedly voting against their interests and putting people in place that are having such a negative impact on our communities, and it just almost appears as though that everybody's somewhat blind to it.
Yeah, I mean, getting it wrong is different than ill intent. Ill intent makes it seem like the whole construct of these policies is to end policing, whether it's to take away immunities, to take away policing tools. When you don't allow chase of the bad guys, in Florida, we would think that's like not having police at all, because you don't have the ability to bring anyone to justice that may have committed a criminal offense. You know, Mr. Caldwell, you know, you've heard the gentleman sitting next to you, Mr. Yanis, say he's left. Your brother tragically was the victim of a murder, died. I guess my question to you is Chicago savable? Or is the city in such a downward trajectory that our only hope is to make sure that these policies don't spread to other places?
That's something that I've thought about a great deal since last year. Is Chicago savable? Absolutely, it is savable. I think we absolutely have to unite as a city. And a lot of the leadership that we've seen, Brandon Johnson, as you know, he just got elected into office, but crime is now up 29–30%. If the leadership doesn't start changing, if the folks in Chicago don't start voting differently and demanding justice versus becoming numb to what we see as a daily slaughter, then we can't get anything done. We can't have movement. But I do believe that the city can be saved and is worth being saved.
Thank you all for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.